Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you to the seminar on harmony in relationship with my church, organized by Inner Space. Again, a very warm welcome to all of you to the seminar on harmony in relationships with my church, organized by Inner Space. Should you need any technical support, please contact our Zalo hotline number at the beginning of the chat box. We welcome you to communicate with us via the chat box, which you can see on the screen. You can offer your ideas, questions, and or responses in the chat box. You can also see ideas from others in the chat box. If you have any questions and or comments, please text them in the chat box, and I will relay them to our speaker as many as possible, either during or at the end of the program. About our speaker tonight, my George is a best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and inner development teacher. For the past 30 years, he has been coaching and guiding the personal and executive development of people in companies and communities in over 40 countries. My George is a very dear friend of Vietnam. Mike, from far away England, fascinated by the land and people of Vietnam, has visited Vietnam 3 times, and thousands of people have joined his seminars and watched him on Vietnam television in programs including Contemporary, People, Người đương thời on VTV3, VTV1, and FBNC. 6 of his books have been published in Vietnamese and are very popular. Mike is here with us tonight to speak on harmony in relationships. Welcome, Mike, and it is so lovely to have you with us tonight. Now I will hand over to you to start the seminar, and thank you all and enjoy the program.
Thanks, Phuong. Thank you, and it's nice to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. And it's been quite a while since I spoke to everyone, or anyone in fact, in Vietnam. So it's nice to reconnect with the audience, with you, with everyone there. So I think it's probably useful to proceed with the particular subject that we're kind of focusing on today. And the focus of our time together is, as you know, relationships. And the title of the program that you've given the program is Harmony in Relationships, but it kind of probably should be more about how to restore harmony in relationships. Because relationships do tend to break down in just about every culture in the world quite frequently. And that's when the big question arises in our own minds is, how do I repair? How do I fix? What do I need to do? What do we need to do to repair the relationship? And that's really what I'm going to talk about today, is how to repair a relationship that is, well, you could say it's gone bad, or something's happened to disconnect with someone, or it's just a very difficult person in your life. I think life really is defined by the relationships that we have. It's the context of life. We have a relationship with everything and everyone. Some would even say we have a relationship with ourselves, and that's the most important relationship. But really today we're talking about our relationships with other people, and why and when and how those relationships kind of go wrong, and what we can do, how to fix them, basically, how to repair them. So we're going to explore what it is, what a difficult person is, as well as ways to repair your relationship with the difficult person in your life. And so that you don't have to look at my face for an hour, which I'm sure is not such a pleasant experience, I'm just going to take you through a little bit of a presentation on screen, and it's I guess with the main ideas of what I'd like to kind of share with you during the session this afternoon. And I've been told to speak a little bit slowly so that you can translate, and there's time for translation. So I hope I'm speaking slowly enough and that you're getting the chance to hear me clearly. So really what we're looking at today is how to deal better with difficult relationships. And everyone has a difficult person in their life. And there's ways, methodologies, techniques that you can use to repair those relationships. But even before we kind of go there, I'd just like to put in place the basic principles behind not just this particular seminar, not just this particular webinar, but I guess behind all our lives. 4 principles really, which define, well, our happiness in life, our success in life, how well our relationships will maintain their harmony in life. And principle number 1 is consciousness is what you are. And this is what they don't teach us in school. Other words for consciousness are spirit, soul, self, psyche, or just the I that says I am. Consciousness is what you are. It's not what you see in the bathroom mirror in the morning. That's what we learn to believe we are. That's what we're taught to believe we are. But actually, when you identify or build your sense of identity out of what you are not, which is just the appearance in the mirror, then you are guaranteed to make yourself suffer. And then you will project that suffering into your relationships. And that's the primary reason why relationships don't work as they should. So the first principle is that I will always be speaking to you as consciousness, not as a Vietnamese, not as a boy, not as a girl, not as a man, not as a woman, but as consciousness. I'm always going to refer you to that being who, what you are. The second principle, which is kind of the hardest one to live in a sense, is the principle of self-responsibility. It's this idea that I kind of have to get everyone over in every seminar, every webinar, every training course, in organizations, outside of organizations. And it's the idea that you are responsible for every thought and feeling that you create in your consciousness. Yeah, so you can't blame anyone else. There's no reason to criticize anyone else for how you feel, what you are thinking, for your circumstances, for your state of being. It's this idea of self-responsibility. And when you start living that, it's easy to theorize it, but not so easy to live it, then you lift yourself out of what's called a victim mentality. You cease to be and feel like a victim of other people and of circumstances. Principle number 3 is I hope that after this particular session, you will have had your curiosity aroused. Curiosity really means this, wow, this is an interesting set of ideas. I need to research this for myself. I need to understand this for myself. Yeah, in other words, I'm going to say to you, please don't believe or just believe a word I say, but see for yourself. And we've got 2 very, very good guides into much deeper aspects of the ideas that I will share with you. And those guides are Dr. Google and Professor Amazon. I presume you have Amazon also in your country. And if you consult either of those 2, you can research any particular topic you like. And I hope that you will research some of the ideas that I share with you today. Otherwise, nothing will change in your life. until you see, realize for yourself. The fourth principle is that, well, you see a picture here of the surface of the sun, and the sun flares quite a lot. And really what this represents, what this is a good metaphor for, is your emotion. You know, when you're emotional, it's like a solar flaring. The energy flares up, a little bit goes off into the universe, but eventually the flaring of your emotion comes back. It settles back in, as a solar flare does. The energy of the flaring settles back in to the surface of the sun. So your emotional upsetness will settle back into your consciousness. In other words, you cannot stay angry, you cannot stay fearful, you cannot stay sad for all time. You eventually re-merge that energy. And so emotion is not good or bad or right or wrong or shouldn't be emotional. I'm not saying that. They will happen. Yeah, emotional upsetness or flaring of your emotions will happen. But don't start thinking, oh, I shouldn't be emotional. I should be calm and quiet. This is wrong. I should be more peaceful, more patient, etc. And so these upsetness, these emotional flarings will be triggered, and perhaps even triggered during this particular session. So these are the four underlying principles and if you like, red threads that run through our time together. Yeah. So what is a difficult person? You know, what is someone who's become difficult for you? And just think about that person that you have encountered in your life so far who you find it difficult to relate to. Maybe it started well, but they have become difficult for you. So they say that a difficult person is someone who does what you don't want them to do, or who doesn't do what you do want them to do. Yeah, so a difficult person is someone who does what you don't want them to do, or who doesn't do what you do want them to do, and then you don't know what to do about them. Yeah. Now the key word is want. The key word is I want them to be a certain way, to do certain things, or I don't want them to be like this. I don't want them to do that. Yeah. If you notice within your consciousness, you're creating the thought of wanting something from them. And when they don't deliver the fruit of your desire, of your wanting, then you start to label them difficult in your consciousness. So it's all occurring within you. Yeah, they're just doing what they're doing, but it may not agree with what you want them to do. So the difficult relationship really starts in your consciousness. So this is when we apply the principle of self-responsibility. In other words, you are not taking responsibility for your thoughts and your feelings in that moment. So the principle of self-responsibility goes something like this. It's not what you say or do that makes me feel this way. It's what I do with what you say or do that makes me feel this way. This is the bit that most people don't quite get, because we're taught to believe it's what other people say or do that makes us feel upset, makes us feel angry. You're making me feel really sad with what you are doing. That's what we are taught to believe, that the other person is responsible for what we think and what we feel. But that belief, I would recommend you challenge. And if you challenge that belief, you will begin to realize it's not what they say or do that makes you feel this way. It's what you are doing in your consciousness with what they say or do that makes you feel that way. You know, just this one principle alone is, well, almost enough to set you free in that relationship with that difficult person. So there's a little formula for success in life. E plus R equals O. And this really means event plus response equals outcome. In other words, other people are events in your life. They walk in the room and you create a response to that person. And according to your response to that person or that situation, so the outcome will emerge, will be created. For example, David walks in the room and he opines. In other words, he gives his opinion about something. Your response is, oh, I disagree, you're wrong. And so the outcome, if you're aware, you will notice that you are suffering emotionally. You disagree. In other words, you're saying you're wrong. And if you notice, whenever you say that to someone, there's a little bit of anger, there's a little bit of fear, and the beginning of an argument. Yeah? And so there's a disconnection in the relationship. So that relationship, it needs to be repaired. Yeah? And so the best way of responding would be not to say, I disagree, you're wrong. It would be to say something like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more so that I may understand why you have that opinion. Yeah. Maybe another example, Mary's late for the meeting. And so you say to Mary, you're late. You've let me down once again. And so I'm sad that you're late. I'm angry that Mary is late. And so once again, the outcome is I am suffering emotionally. Not right, it's not wrong, it's not good, it's not bad. It's just self-inflicted suffering in the form of sadness or anger. You're late, you've let me down. And so there's a disconnect, a breaking of that relationship with Mary because you're projecting your suffering onto her. You're saying she has made you sad. She has made you angry. Yeah, and so now, because there is that disconnect, that relationship is in need of repair. So there's little ways in which we break the connection, and our relationships are in need of repair. The most common mistake in our relationships that we make is that we try to control people. And that's really what we're doing. I don't agree with you. You should agree with me. You should have the same opinion as me. You should be on time. And so really, whenever you think they should, they have to, they must, should, have to, or must, it means you are attempting to control them. First of all in your mind, and then through your words, then through your emotional state, yeah, your emotional flaring. But you cannot control another human being. You know, even if you put a gun to their head and say, get on your knees, who decides to go on their knees? They do. You don't make them, they decide. 1 in 1,000 will say, I don't believe you're going to shoot me. And they'll call your bluff. Maybe 1 in 1,000,000. But ultimately, they make the decision to either go on their knees or not. So you don't control, but you do influence other people. Yeah, you do influence. Another word for leadership in the context of our relationship is the one who has influence. Not control, but influence. So when you try to control, ultimately you will fail. Parents, they try to control their children, and they know what failure feels like because children don't always do what I want, basically. And so you suffer emotionally. You suffer. I'm just getting a little signal on my screen. Let me deny that. Okay. And so when you try to control, you make yourself suffer emotionally. But when you learn the art of influence, then you learn to influence the other person. However, you may need to practice patience. In other words, it may take a little time for them to be influenced by your connection, your presence in that relationship. But it does, in the end, generate greater satisfaction, fulfillment, basically. That's where your satisfaction is going to come from inside, from being successful at influencing someone. Not because you want them to do something, but because you created the appropriate and accurate behavior that was able to influence the outcome of the relationship. So this is the shift, basically, from control to influence. Not something they teach us in school. So let's go into some of the methods, the ways of repairing a difficult relationship, a relationship that's gone wrong. And these are 10 ways that you can repair a relationship. You might want to note them down as I take you through each one. They're quite practical, but mostly not so easy to practice. But if you have a difficult relationship in your life, you might find one of these methods useful, practical, in your repairing of that relationship. So method number one is what's called accepting responsibility. We've kind of talked about it already. And it's about taking responsibility for your contribution to the relationship. Yeah, they are just saying or doing whatever they're saying or doing. It's not something that you can control, but you can control your response to what they say or do. And that's really what responsibility means, the ability to respond appropriately and accurately. Now, if you're getting upset with them, that's your creation. If you are suffering, that's your creation. It's not what they're saying or doing, it's you. And it's because you're not taking responsibility for your creation that you are projecting your suffering onto them. So, going the wrong way. Number two is check your creation of your version of them. What we do when we relate to another human being is we create our version of them in our consciousness. So the relationship seems to be with the person who is outside of ourselves at the other end of the room. But really, what you're doing is you're having a relationship primarily with your version of them. And everyone creates their own version of the other person. This is why you get 3 people in a relationship and you have 2 people. One person just does not like the third person, but the second person gets on with them fine. And you can't understand, why are you not more like me, and why don't you not like that person? And it's because you're having a relationship with a different version of them. A little bit like when you go and watch a movie with a friend and you go for a coffee after the movie and you talk about the movie and you say, well, I never saw that. I didn't see that bit of the movie. And they say, well, I never saw that. I never saw what you saw in the movie. Did we watch the same movie? Yes, we did. But we both created a different version of the characters in the movie. And that's who you're having a relationship with, your version of the other person. So how are you creating them? Yeah. In other words, if you criticize the other person mentally, it means you are distorting the energy of your own consciousness. You're distorting the energy of yourself. Now, when there's criticism, there's usually a little bit of anger, a little bit of fear. And so there's an emotional projection of that anger and fear towards them. But primarily, you are distorting the energy of your consciousness into anger, into the vibration of fear. And so you, in that sense, are suffering first and most. So that's why I always have to check how I'm creating the other person in my own consciousness. So the third method is, instead of going into the relationship, going towards the other person with this desire for something from them, instead of wanting something from them, ask yourself, what can I give to them? It's very difficult for many people to encounter another person with the consciousness of what can I give them, because we are learning from the day we arrive that the world is here to give us, to get what we want, to get what I want. And so ask yourself, what can I give this person? What's appropriate? What do they need? And how can I meet that need of them? And so method number 4 is to lay a foundation in the relationship of respect. It's very difficult to have a relationship with anyone unless there's a foundation of respect. One of my favorite stories is the famous penitentiary, Dade County, Miami, in America. And it had the highest breakout, highest levels of drug abuse, highest levels of conflict in all the penitentiaries in America. This was about 10 or 15 years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but it's a true story. New governor comes in and he says, now I want all my warders and staff to go on a 3-day customer service training program. So he sends everyone away to be trained in customer service. And when they come back into the prison, he says to his warders and all his staff, he says, now I want you to treat the prisoners as if they were your customers. And it completely transformed the culture of the organization. They did the research 2 years later, and it had the lowest breakout, lowest levels of conflict, lowest levels of drug abuse in all the penitentiaries in America. Reason, one word: respect. So instead of seeing the prisoners as low life level scum, they began to respect them as human beings. They began to see those human beings as worthy and valuable. Really, that's what respect is to have the vision of the worth and the value of the other person. Always to maintain that in my vision of the other person. And so they began to respect, regardless of the history of the individual, regardless of what their intentions were, they began to respect them as human beings. And it transformed the culture of the organization. So, can I respect someone that I've decided that I don't like? If you disrespect someone, remember, you're disrespecting your version of them in your own mind. And that means you're sabotaging your own ability to be respectful. You are diminishing your own self-respect in that process. Once again, something they don't teach us in school. Number 5 is to free yourself in the relationship from expectations. In other words, can I interact with the other person without expecting anything from them? Sounds easy in theory, not so easy in practice. To relate to someone, to interact with someone without having expectations of them. If you are going to have expectations of the other person, the secret is, don't make your happiness dependent on having your expectations met. Can you separate the two? Your happiness and your expectations. Can you untangle the two? I expect you to be brilliant. I expect you to be great. I expect you to do whatever you said you would do by 3 o'clock this afternoon. But if you don't, it's okay. My happiness is not dependent on it. But if you make your happiness dependent on your expectations and you're demonstrating that to other people, then you're using what's called emotional blackmail to get them to do what you want. In other words, they become aware that you will become angry if they don't do what you expect. And this is how parents put pressure on their children to pass exams or to do what they want. If you do what I want, I'll be very happy. But if you don't do what I want, I'll be very unhappy. I'll be upset. And so the child learns to believe that they are responsible for their parents' happiness. No, they are not. The truth is, they are not. But we learn to believe that we are in those moments in our relationship with our parent when we're very young. And they use expectations and emotional blackmail to get us to do what they want, to make them happy. Yeah. So now, when you really understand that, can you walk into your relationships with your friends, your family, your children, without putting the pressure of expectation onto them? And you know who they are. Number 6 is, if you ever feel cornered in a relationship, the only way out, the best way out really, is not to fight your way out, is not to run away from the person, is not to avoid them, but how can I serve them? Yeah, serve your way out of the relationship. What do they need? What can I give to them? Similar to principle number 3, what can I give? How can I serve that individual so that they feel freer? When you're cornered by someone, there's usually a dependency. It's because they're becoming dependent on you. And so don't run away, don't avoid them, but how do you serve gradually over time, reducing the amount of service so that you break that dependency of them upon you? Yeah. And so that may be appropriate to a difficult relationship that you're having. Number 7, don't take things personally. Again, easy to say, but not easy to do. We take things so personally, but I don't know if you remember as a child in the playground in school, we used to call each other names all the time. We used to insult each other so easily all the time. And then 2 minutes later, forget it, run away, play on, and nothing detrimental happened to the relationship. In other words, it just bounced off us. Sometimes you meet someone and you can say anything to them, and you can even insult them, and it doesn't bother them. In other words, they have a thick skin. They're not sensitive to whatever is said to them. And as we grow up, we tend to become more sensitive to what other people say, what we imagine they think of us, to their attitude towards us. In other words, we take things personally. And this is a sure sign that you are not aware that consciousness is what you are. You're building your sense of who you are out of what you've been told by others. You're beautiful, or you wear nice clothes, or you look great, or you're fantastic at certain things. And so when someone says you look ugly, you look terrible, you're not so good at that, are you? You become upset. You take it personally because your sense of who you are has been built out of what you are not. Yeah, and that's why we take things personally. So this is why I will always encourage you to be curious. Why is it I'm taking this so personally? Why is it whenever I see them, I really want to avoid what they're going to say to me because I know it's going to upset me, which means I'm going to take it very personally. And so I'm curious, what is it within me that I need to change and shift so that I don't take things so personally? I can stay calm and stay connected to that person. This is why curiosity becomes rather important. See them as your teacher. You know, that person is your teacher. The person, your most difficult person, your most difficult relationship has entered your life to teach you something. Yeah. This is the whole principle, is that this person, yeah, is not happening to you. They're happening for you. Yeah. Sometimes we even think, why is this person doing this to me? Why are they doing that, saying that to me and making me so upset? No. The question to ask is, why are they doing that for me? Why are they saying that for me? And when you make the shift from to for, then you make the shift from slave to master. You're curious now. Why have they entered my life? What is it they've come to teach me? What's the lesson for me in this interaction, in this relationship? If you don't make that shift in your consciousness, then you'll run away and you'll just encounter the same thing that's triggering your suffering in another relationship somewhere in the future. Seek to understand them. In other words, don't instantly react. Don't instantly be triggered. Yeah, seek to understand. The old principle is seek to understand before you seek to be understood. In other words, why are they saying this? Why are they doing that? There must be a reason why they're acting like this, or why they run away from me. There must be a reason. So I need to sit down and understand them with greater depth. Seek to understand them. And as you listen, because you have to listen, you have to use your ear to understand someone, they begin to sense that you value them. They begin to sense how valuable they are. And that helps them restore and maintain their own self-respect. You can't make them do that, but just by listening, by understanding, you're saying, I value what you are thinking, what you are feeling, and that is helping them restore their self-value, their self-respect. Same thing, ultimately. And then the final one is possibly for some people the most challenging, and it's to see the person, not the position. If we were born and raised by authoritative parents, then it's like we grow up with this fear of authority. We had a parent who was always barking orders, who was under the illusion that they could control people, and they just had to shout a bit louder and they saw you jump out of fear, and you did something out of fear. And so as you grow up, you leave your parents, but you go to work and you have a manager, and a manager becomes the authority figure. And you go, oh yes, okay. And so they shout and you jump. And so now you have the fear of authority because you see the person as the position of authority. And so now you are generating a form of suffering called fear, anxiety, worry, tension. It's all different forms of fear. And so to be free of that fear, it's necessary to start relating to the person and not the position. Because the person is just a human being, just like me, just like everyone else. And so have a relationship, make a connection with the human being, with the person. Find a way to do that. Have a conversation that's not about work. It's not going to exaggerate their position, but is going to help them open up and display their humanity, as a person in the relationship. So find a way to do that. And that may help them not to be so difficult for you to connect with. And then there's not just 10, there's 11, but here are the 10 in summary. And here are the 10 in summary. And I don't know if you've taken notes, and you might want to write those down, but it's different for different people. Different people have different needs to reconnect, to repair, to reestablish a relationship. And one of these methods may be useful, may not, in the context of your personal relationships or your relationship with your difficult person. But there is an 11th, and the 11th is the one that works in all difficult relationships. There's a nice quote by a guy called Nikola Tesla. I'm sure you've heard of Tesla. He was famous for his ideas and his revolution around energy and electricity, etc. But he once said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, vibration. Now remember, at the very beginning, I reminded you that consciousness is what you are. Yeah? You're not your name, you're not what you wear, you're not what you look like physically. Consciousness is a non-physical energy. It's what you are, the authentic you. And that energy of consciousness vibrates, has a frequency, a vibration. And you can be the master of that vibration. At any moment, you decide. Yeah? So, methodology number 11. When you have a difficult relationship that needs repair, when you're not getting on with someone, send them the energy of your consciousness. Send them a vibration of good wishings. See them in your consciousness, on the screen of your mind. Same thing, to all intents and purposes, mind, consciousness, same thing. See them on the screen of your mind and give them good wishings in your mind. Now that has two effects. Number one is that you repair the relationship with your version of them. In other words, if you've been becoming angry at them in your thoughts, you have been wounding yourself because there's a memory of them wrapped in the memory of anger or fear or sadness or whatever. And so that's a wound in your consciousness. So when you give the vibration, the energy of good wishes to that wound in your consciousness, you begin to heal that wound. It's not a physical wound. Physical wounds need ointment and sunlight and so on. But the wound in your consciousness requires your highest energy. Now, if we want to call good wishes care for them, or you want to call caring about them love, then that's just a label for a vibration of your consciousness. That's what love is. It's the highest vibration, frequency of the energy of your consciousness. Yeah. Now, the second effect is that when you next encounter that person, then you will find that the relationship is easier. It's easier to connect with them. They find it easier to connect with you because they have been receiving that vibration, that energy, that frequency remotely, not even being conscious of it maybe, but they've been receiving that energy from you, the being of consciousness. And they might be hundreds of miles away, but the energy of your consciousness knows no distance. It knows no distance. So this is methodology number 11 that you might want to experiment with. Try it with someone that you're having a difficult relationship with and that you've decided they are a difficult person in your life. And finally, part 3, a few questions. What if they don't want to change? No problem. If they don't want to change, it's not my job to change other people. Yeah, can't change anyone because I can't control anyone. So accept them as they are. And the moment you shift the energy of your consciousness into acceptance, you'll find the relationship becomes much, much easier. Yeah, in other words, you stop fighting them in your own mind, in your own consciousness. So don't expect them to change, but be surprised when they do. And they will if you experiment with these methods. How do you stop yourself reacting to them? That requires what's called self-understanding. You need to understand yourself more, much more than what you've been taught. And most of us are not taught anything about self-understanding. There's three things they don't teach us in school. Number one, they don't teach us how to understand myself, who I am, what I am, why I'm here. Number two, they don't teach us the dynamics of human relationships, how human relationships work, how they break down, why they need repairing sometimes. And this, of course, is why the lawyers have such a good time, because we don't really understand the dynamics of relationships. And the third thing they don't teach us in school is anything about money, finance. Yeah, and there's a reason for that. And I hope you are curious enough to explore and find the reason why these three things are missing from our education, our formal education. And yet these are the three most important things that we'll encounter in our life. Self-understanding, the understanding of the dynamics of our relationships, and how the dynamics of money, finance work in our society. The third question, how do I know if I'm being difficult for someone else? Yes. And of course, we are the difficult person very often for someone else. And you'll notice when people try to avoid you, or people just want to have short conversations with you, or they maybe don't even want to listen to you, or maybe they're always fighting you. They're against you. And so I need to look at myself. Relationship is a mirror. I need to see in the mirror of the relationship, am I being difficult for them? You know? And listening to yourself, listening to the answer that comes not from the other person, but from within yourself. And then you come to know what you need to change within yourself. So I'm sure there's many, many more questions which you have based on the ideas and the insights that I've just shared with you. And if we don't get a chance to answer all the questions tonight, then you can send any other questions around any of these ideas to the email that you see in this page. And I'll just leave it up for a moment. I'm sure you have the email already, but some of you will not. And that you can send your questions to that particular email.
Thank you so much, Mike. We have received quite a lot of excellent questions. So I find a common questions about asking for your clarification of sixth way, the number 6. If you feel cornered, serve your way out gradually. Break dependency. Could you kindly elaborate it a little bit more, and maybe you give an example? Thank you.
Well, sometimes people ask, and I do quite a bit of work around the idea of purpose. What's my purpose in life? Yeah, and so I usually kind of break it down between the default choice, which is to survive, and the conscious choice, which is to be of service to others, to help others. I mean, service really means helping, guiding, showing. And so when you make service your purpose in life, it's applicable in every relationship. You go for tea at your granny's. And so Granny wants to make tea, but no, it's okay, Granny, I'll make the tea. I'll get the coffee today. And so it's just little things like that. Right through to if you're the leader of a team in an organization, then you are what's called a servant leader. And so you notice one or two people, they've become very dependent on you. And so you don't reject them, you don't push them away, but you work out what these individuals need. And it's like a little bit like the manager of a football team. He has sort of 20 odd different human beings with different personalities, different backgrounds, different stories, all with different needs. Some need to have an arm around them. That's a form of serving them. Others need to be ignored because they don't want a lot of attention. They just need to be alone. So that's a way of just allowing them and others need a lot of motivation. So you're serving them by motivating them. Now, sometimes you feel a bit cornered by a relationship because someone's become very dependent on you. And so there's an individual for that manager in the team who's very dependent, always coming and asking questions and why is this and why is that? How is this going? Why is that going? And so serving them, serving your way out of them cornering you, means not finding a way to avoid them, not sending them off somewhere to get answers to their questions, but being present for them, helping them, but at the same time showing them that they don't need to be so dependent on me. And that's really what I'm doing with you. I'm saying, be curious, see for yourself. I'm here to be of service. I'm here to share these ideas, but I'm also saying it's not enough just to listen to seminars, just to read books. You have to go and see for yourself. And there's many people, sometimes they're called seminar junkies, and they come on all these seminars and they go, oh, this is great, this is wonderful, it's fantastic. They go away and they come to the next one, oh, this is great, this is fantastic. And they ask the same questions because they just want attention, really. And what I'm saying is no problem, that's okay. But have you aroused, re-aroused your own curiosity, which you had when you were very young, which allows you to go and see and have your own realizations around these subjects, so that you break your dependency on your need for someone to tell you all the time. You can see for yourself. So just let me finish by saying, I've tried to explain that consciousness is what you are, whatever word you want to use, but you're not what you see in the bathroom mirror. But I'm really saying, don't just believe that. What does that mean? How can you see that for yourself? How can you know that for yourself? How can you make the shift from believing it to knowing it, to feeling it, to be, oh yeah, now I get it, now I understand. Because unless that happens in your own consciousness, something called self-realization, nothing is going to change. In all these books and all these seminars and all these Zoom calls that you might attend, nothing will change in you unless you see and realize for yourself. Just to finish, in other words, in 2 years' time, I would expect you, without making my happiness dependent on it, I would expect you to make this presentation that I've just made and be able to really understand what you're saying. Why not? Anyone can. All I share with you is what you already know.
Great. Thanks so much. We have received so many questions, but I would like to ask you another question. We have some difficult relationship with people outside, and normally it's easy for us to accept, the things happening with people outside, but it's so difficult for us to accept inside our family. So what should we do?
Yeah, the family is sometimes the most challenging set of relationships around you. And so this is why, your version of each member of your family that you're creating in your head is my sister, my mother, my father, my brother, or whatever. And as soon as you use the word my, or they're mine, my family, then it's like you are creating something called attachment, to your version of them. And where there's attachment, there's going to be dependency. So you become dependent on them for how you feel in yourself. Now, to break that attachment, to break that dependency, which is not healthy, it's not necessary to leave home or reject these people, but it's to create a deeper version of them. In other words, I've been saying to you, consciousness is what you are. You're not your name, you're not your family, you're not your country, you're not your nationality. You are essentially, the essence of you is consciousness. That's what you are. Strip everything away. Yeah, and that's what you are. And so can you see yourself just as the being of consciousness, and then can you see them stripped of the labels you put on my sister, my brother, Mary and David, and older, parent, younger, because these are just labels. Can you strip them of all those labels and just see them as conscious beings on their own journey through life, on their own way? And you just happen to be journeying together for a while, but eventually you'll each go your own way. So can you begin to see that? And so when you begin to realize who they are, who you are, then the relationships change their texture. It's not that you reject, it's not that you hate, it's not that you want, it's somehow you begin to see them in a different way. You become less attached and less dependent. Therefore, there are less expectations of and in those relationships. Therefore, there's less suffering in those relationships. The key word is familiarity. Family means familiarity, and that means there's attachment. We're so familiar, and therefore so dependent. We've become so dependent on each other over time. And so you're becoming dependent on other people for how you feel within yourself. So that's got to break, that's got to go. It's not easy, but that's part of the work, if you like, of self-realization, of waking up. You probably heard this saying, wake up. And so if you're dependent on anyone else for how you feel in yourself, it means you are in a kind of sleep. You're a bit sleepy. You haven't realized who you are, as a free being.
Wonderful. We have received many, many excellent questions. Unfortunately, we have to close the session, Mike. And I would like to sincerely thank you so much, Mike, for your invaluable time and sharing with us on harmony relationships, which is so great topic for us to explore. It was so practical, meaningful, and fruitful. From our heart, we sincerely hope that you can be with us again in the near future on Zoom, or maybe you visit us in person as soon as possible. Is it possible, Mike?
Let's see how the world turns in the next few months. Who knows what might happen? But thank you very much for tuning in, and thanks for the invitation. Take care.
Yeah. Yes, and also I also would like to take this opportunity to thank our dear translator, Ms. Phạm Thị Sen, for her beautiful translation. And thanks the technical team for your excellent and timely support, as well as our heartfelt thanks to all of you for your excellent questions and important contribution to the program tonight. We will have a seminar on 5-step inner space meditation for strengthening self-respect via Zoom tomorrow evening with Tris at 8 p.m. tomorrow evening, if you would like to join. For more seminars, please contact Inner Space, and detail will be displayed at the end. And thank you again for being with us tonight, and have a lovely evening. And we look forward to seeing you again at our future programs. Good night, and thank you again, Mike, for your time and for your wonderful sharing tonight. Thank you, and goodbye, and see you all again in the near future.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, and send love to all of you. Thanks.